So, France in 1870 decided to have a little tiff with Prussia. It did not go well. Emperor Napoleon III, a man whose primary qualification was his last name, got himself captured at the Battle of Sedan. It was a spectacular failure, the kind you write epic poems about. The Second French Empire collapsed like a cheap suit, and a new, hastily assembled Third Republic was born. This new government's first brilliant move was to get Paris surrounded and besieged by the Prussians. For 132 days, Parisians got a crash course in famine-based gastronomy. We're talking rats, cats, and the entire contents of the local zoo. Nothing says national unity quite like barbecuing an elephant out of sheer desperation. All this suffering fostered a certain skepticism towards the national government that had gotten them into this mess. After signing a humiliating peace treaty, the new French government, led by a delightfully crusty old historian named Adolphe Thiers, set up shop in Versailles. You know, the place famous for kings who lost their heads. A great omen. Thiers' first priority wasn't rebuilding or feeding people, but disarming Paris. Specifically, he wanted the cannons of the Paris National Guard. The problem was, Parisians had paid for these 400-odd cannons themselves through public subscription. They felt, quite reasonably, that they were theirs. So on March 18, 1871, the army was sent in the dead of night to steal the cannons from Montmartre. They forgot to bring horses to pull them. A truly masterful plan that was foiled by women, milkmaids, and children who surrounded the soldiers and politely asked them what on earth they were doing. The soldiers, being regular guys, ended up siding with the crowd. The government's authority evaporated on the spot. With two of his generals dead and his army refusing orders, Thiers and the entire French government did the only logical thing. They ran away. They packed their bags and fled to Versailles, leaving Paris, a city of 2 million people, completely ungoverned. This left the Central Committee of the National Guard in the most awkward position imaginable. They were just a bunch of citizen soldiers who suddenly found themselves in charge of a major European capital. You can almost hear the collective "oh crap" moment echoing through the Hôtel de Ville. Their first declaration was basically an apology for being in power, promising to hold elections immediately. They had no grand plan for a socialist utopia. They were just the last ones in the room when the lights went out, desperately trying to find the fuse box. And so, on March 26th, they held an election. A surprisingly fair and orderly one, all things considered. The result was the Paris Commune, a council of 92 members. It was a glorious mess of different beliefs. You had your Jacobins, nostalgic for the First French Revolution's brand of terror. You had your Blanquists, professional revolutionaries who believed a small secret group should just seize power. And you had your Proudhonists and other assorted socialists who had actual ideas about workers' rights and economic reform. Getting them to agree on what to have for lunch was a political victory. This wasn't some monolithic Marxist entity. It was a chaotic, democratic, argumentative body trying to invent a new world while their old one was literally camped a few miles away cleaning its rifles. Despite the internal squabbling, the Commune actually got stuff done. Their legislative record in just 2 months is kinda staggering. They declared the separation of church and state, which was wildly radical at the time. They abolished night work for bakers, a huge win for a perennially exhausted profession. They suspended rent payments, returned tools from pawn shops for free, and decreed that abandoned workshops could be taken over by the workers who had worked there. They established a fixed salary for all commune employees, from the top official to the lowest clerk, to prevent a new ruling class from forming. It was a flurry of activity, a real-time experiment in what a government run by and for working people might look like, even if that government's life expectancy was measured in weeks. And let's be clear, this wasn't just a boys' club. Women were absolutely central to the Commune, even if they couldn't vote or hold office. Groups like the Union des Femmes were organized and politically active, demanding everything from equal pay to the right to divorce. Figures like Louise Michel, a schoolteacher and anarchist, were everywhere, organizing ambulances, fighting on the barricades, and giving speeches that could set fire to rain. These women weren't just supporting their husbands, they were active revolutionaries with their own agenda. They saw the Commune not just as a political revolution, but a social one, a chance to overturn thousands of years of patriarchy. The Versailles government, of course, just saw them as hysterics and patroleuses, mythical female arsonists, a convenient bogeyman to justify future brutality. The Commune was also very, very good at symbolic gestures. Their masterpiece? Tearing down the Vendôme column. This was a massive bronze column cast from captured enemy cannons with a statue of Napoleon Bonaparte on top. It was the ultimate symbol of French militarism and imperialism. So, on May 16th, with a crowd cheering and a band playing, they pulled it down. It was a hugely popular move inside Paris. It was also, from a public relations perspective, an absolute disaster. To the rest of France, it looked like a bunch of godless anarchists were destroying the national heritage. It was the perfect propaganda gift to the Versailles government, which promptly used it to paint the communards as savage vandals who hated France itself. Optics, people, they matter. While Paris was busy inventing the future, Adolphe Thiers was busy assembling an army to murder it in its crib. He had a singular focus: crush Paris no matter the cost. He negotiated with the Prussians, his supposed enemies, to release French prisoners of war so they could form a new, reliable army. Let that sink in. He made a deal with the foreign invaders to get enough soldiers to slaughter his own countrymen. This new Army of Versailles was carefully indoctrinated. They were told Parisians were all criminals, atheists, and foreigners who wanted to destroy society. For weeks they probed the city's defenses, executing any captured communard soldiers on the spot. This wasn't going to be a negotiation. It was going to be an extermination. On May 21st, the Versailles army entered Paris through an undefended gate. Someone, apparently, forgot to lock the door. What followed was La Semaine Sanglante, the Bloody Week. It was not a battle, it was a city-wide massacre. The communards, vastly outnumbered and outgunned, fought heroically from behind thousands of hastily erected barricades. Every street became a fortress, but the Versailles troops advanced systematically, using artillery to blast through buildings, flanking the barricades, and showing absolutely no mercy. Prisoners were not taken. Anyone suspected of being a communard, which basically meant anyone in a working-class neighborhood with calloused hands, was shot against the nearest wall. As defeat became inevitable, the Commune became vengeful. In a final act of defiant despair, they began setting fire to key symbols of the old government. The Tuileries Palace, the traditional home of French monarchs, went up in flames. The Hôtel de Ville, their own headquarters, was torched so it wouldn't be retaken. The Ministry of Finance, the Palace of Justice, all burned. burned. Was it a calculated act of scorched earth policy, or just nihilistic rage? It was probably both. The Versailles government, naturally, blamed them for trying to burn down all of Paris, using the black smoke choking the city as further proof of their barbarism. They conveniently forgot to mention that the army's own incendiary shells were responsible for a great many of the fires. The fighting ended on May 28th at the Père-Lachaise cemetery. The last 147 communards were lined up against the wall and shot. That wall, the Mur des Fides, became a sacred monument for the left. The killing, however, did not stop. For weeks after, Paris was subjected to a citywide witch hunt. Military tribunals worked 24/7, handing out death sentences in minutes. The final death toll is still debated, but it's estimated between 10,000 and 30,000 people were killed by their own government in a single week. It was the deadliest week in the history of Paris, far worse than the Revolutionary Terror of 1793. It was state-sponsored slaughter on an industrial scale, designed to physically eliminate the city's revolutionary working class. So why does this 72-day doomed experiment still matter? Because it became a powerful, almost mythical event. For Karl Marx, watching from London, it was the first real-world example of the dictatorship of the proletariat, a blueprint for future revolutions. For Lenin and the Bolsheviks, the Commune's failure was a lesson in what not to do. Don't be too nice, don't hesitate, and secure the national bank. The Commune was crushed, but the idea of it, the idea that ordinary people could take control of their own lives and their own city, however briefly, refused to die. It was a bloody, chaotic, and ultimately tragic failure, but it was also one of the most audacious political experiments in modern history, a brief, fiery glimpse of a different kind of world. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!